The fear of staying infantile haunts many of us as we start to realize the importance of maturity. But while we do have the surface understanding of it, we don't necessarily know what lies underneath what we mean by maturity. But it is something desirable, it is something praiseworthy. This we know for sure. But what are the reasons for that? Let's dig deeper into this. So let's start with the fear. Let's start with something uncomfortable, perhaps frustrating, perhaps intended to be avoided. Let's start with infantility. Now, uh, a simple example of infantility would be the most obvious one. Would be a child, right? Who can be more childish or childlike than the child himself, right? Um, so, well, maybe childish, childlike. Now, why do we fear it? Now, of course, you could say that, well, coming with assumption that we do fear it in the first place, but well, it's definitely not something uh, praiseworthy, right? Not something positive, right? When we address it to adults. So, well, the reason for that fear, let's point to the fear or negative attribution that we link to infantility when we address it. Um, okay, well, why? So the most obvious thing would be, well, because when you mature, when you grow as an adult, you're grown up and you're supposed to have the attributes of this growth, right? Something changes. So this is the, let's say, initial state or position, initial point, we can say, uh, your early ages, right? And then, well, time passes, the world moves, and there's supposed to be a difference, right? So, and the difference can be, if we express it positively, we could say, right? So, hopefully, we expect to see the growth with a change of time, with a uh, expansion of mental capacities, physical capacities, experiences, and so and etc. So infantility in adults um, can be attributed to the stagnated growth. It also can be attributed to dependence. Um, Dependence, in a sense, not of openness or vulnerability and disclosure, but in the sense of um, the need to be provided. without which your uh, maybe your survival is threatened. So maybe somewhat complete or full dependence, right? Or it also can be the matter of degree as well. So dependence would be the other one. And of course, kids can be, or baby can be categorized by the sequence of whims, right? By his reactions, um, or whether uh, his needs and wants, expressions of his needs and wants. Let's say so sequences of whims. We can call it instinctive instincts, or maybe reactions. Okay. Okay. Uncontrolled. Uncontrolled. Something happened here. Then the miracle happened. Uncontrolled. Okay. Well, obviously, by maturity, lots of times we would mean the ability to hold responsibility and hold yourself, take responsibility, right? Kind of bear it, and then also to hold yourself accountable. So it's kind of but responsibility and accountability, if you think about it, uh, result from you being in control, okay, or accepting your control. So we'll just write control. All right. So because when you accept yourself being, and you recognize yourself being in control over your actions, you also recognize that something can be the consequence of your deliberate decisions, of your will, and of course choices, of your actions that's been um, chosen by you, that uh, you are accountable for. So both responsibility, we can add this here, responsibility, ability, and then it would be accountability. And responsibility as well has a lot to do with the obligation, right? But obligation has a lot to do with rights, let's say. And then this is also has a lot to do with the acceptation and recognition of your autonomy and control. So, well, so this would mean that, well, stagnated growth, dependence, instinctive reactions, uncontrolled, and here maybe I'll just bring kind of non or control, or rejection of control, rejection. Yes, okay. I'll just put it here. And then obviously for it would differ for maturity. We also can of course add here some capacities. It would be well, I'll already will add here. It could be physical capacity, okay? It could be mental, cognitive, cognitive. capacities that develop that at least or fully develop uh, at certain mm, time period, right? At certain age. So sometimes that's what we would mean by maturity. A lot of it we would also mean something opposite to instinctive reactions, and this would be a conscious, maybe cognition or conscious awareness. And this is that you're not only experience reality sensationally, but you also you're able to reflect on it cognitively. Okay, so you're able to reflect on your experiences, and this a lot adds to your being in control. Point to, let's divide it here. Point to maturity, control. And well, you could also say that physical capacities, mental capacities, all of it kind of add to you being in control or being autonomous. Okay, uh, which would be kind of opposite to dependency. So yes, we see how all these attributes play their role in our understanding of maturity and infantility. Um, well, and now we do realize that for which reasons um, infantility could be looked um, uh, can be seen negatively and maturity positively, and in which cases, because we also understand, well, in the context, infantility could be seen as something neutral if it's again if it's suited to the context, to the context, if it is reasonable. For example, if we talk about the child being childish, there's nothing wrong about it, right? This is understandable, this is reasonable. In this sense, infantility just the way it is, but it's also um, not necessarily neutral, though not necessarily negative. Could be neutral somewhat. Could be also, well, of course, depends on your perception, because maybe it's also kind of not helpful for you, but it is how it is. But now it becomes really complicated when it's in the when this stays in the already grown adults if those um, attributes remain when they are supposed to be changed, and they are supposed to be changed partially because of our uh, developed capacities. Because for the adults who would lack these capacities, the infantility would be understandable. Cognitive, mental, physical capacities also could be empathetical capacities, and so forth, right? Yes. Now let's let's understand how it could be useful to us. What can we make of it? I bring this to you. Okay. So, and first, what we can look at is actually it's not very helpful today. Too many things. Let's let's use this one. I'll just erase this. Um. Okay. So first, let's start with the gross aspect. Gross. The gross aspect is a really important one because, um, well, you obviously want to grow, but what does it mean to grow uh, as the growth that comes from maturity? What kind of growth is it? And I would name or phrase this growth as the expansion. Because as you grow, you expand yourself, uh, and as you expand yourself, okay, so you expand yourself, and you surpass your limitations. Okay, um, and this presents to us the growth on the different levels. Okay, um, it presents to us the growth on a lot of different levels. It could be, let's say, knowledge, skills, or maybe it is expansion in the different fields, let's say. Skills, right? Uh, understanding, let's say, understanding, maybe like social understanding of personal agents. Okay, so we have a growth, expansion in different uh, domains. Um, but when we try to dig deeper into it, we also understand, well, what is underneath of all of it, right? Um, and I would say we can frame it as the expansion of consciousness. Okay, because consciousness is our reflection of reality, right? I think in some philosophical views, it's like consciousness presented as the mirror, right? So it's a reflection of reality, including our inner reality, right? But also an external reality. And as we expand our consciousness, we can be conscious of more, of course, of our own um, experiences, sensations, um, vision, etc. And we also can be conscious, more conscious or understanding of other personal agents, and of the uh, world and being as in itself, or as at least as we can comprehend it. And well, obviously, consciousness in this sense would have a lot to do with the comprehension. Okay. Okay, so comprehension. Um, and and the comprehension in itself is more. The big part of it is uh, possible through uh, reasonings. And reasoning would be like, let's do reasoning. Okay, that's right, reasoning. But reasoning is something like um hmm, okay. Reasoning is something like interpretation, the ability capacity say capacity, but I mean to interpret um, causational relationships. So cause and effect, okay? And there is a possible claim that can be made that without the capacity for this sort of comprehension of relational processes, relational chains, we would not be able to fathom the reality, to expand our consciousness. Because the cause and effect provide an order or system, ordered nature of reality, ordered reality, right? Now, reality without the order cannot be comprehended at all, because even disorder or chaos, it can be only comprehended uh, through the contrast with the ordered reality. So it doesn't make sense, right? Everything uh, that can be comprehended by human mind is comprehended through reasoning, through the understanding of causational relationships. And arguably, we would not be able to reflect, to be conscious without this, uh, without the order, the cause and effect, or without the comprehension of it. Okay, so because you can be conscious of something, of a structured reality. Um, okay, now before it would go too far, let's just stop here. It's expansion of our consciousness through reason, which is also important. Reason. Okay. Now, obviously, you could say, well, how about intuition? How about logic? How about numbers? How about um, patterns that kind of don't go under cause and effect, this kind of reasoning, causational, but we still comprehend reality through it, right? Um, well, arguably, you could say that, well, all of this goes into um, projections of uh, causational relationships on different levels. Okay, so that logic in itself uses causational relationships, um, the pattern recognition is the projection of the previously recognized uh, causational relations. Same with intuition. It's maybe non-conscious, like non-conscious or preconscious, but it's not irrational. Okay, it is rational. So it's not unreasonable. Okay. Well, but the problem with these pre-conscious things is that you can reflect on them unless you are bring them to your consciousness, unless you would uh, recognize them. Okay, because the consciousness reflects. Okay, um, it operates through reflection, and what does it tell us? Well, first it kind of told first it told us that you grow when you expand beyond expand beyond the self, and the self is important because the self is narrowed. Okay, and maturity is all expanding, aware, or reflective. Okay. And the self, let's say, reactive, but not necessarily. But okay, let's. So now the instinctive reactions are necessary and needed, right? But because uh, and when they get out of your control, they hinder your growth. When you are not in control, um, you become less reflecting and more reactive. You see, there is a lot of relationships between consciousness and control, because conscious control, okay, because conscious, because control is not in like force or power, but control as an autonomy. And here where the concept of self-sufficiency, maybe not complete self-sufficiency, but self-sufficiency can arise from. So if we're not conscious, we can be autonomous because we're not in control of ourselves. And if we're not in control of ourselves, we might as well say that something else in control of us, even if this is our biological instincts. But when we mention ourselves being in control, we oftentimes mean our free will. We mean our consciousness. And right. So for this reason, when you don't expand because you're narrowed down, let's say narrowed down to yourself, to the self. Staying in your sensations rather than bringing your senses to reflections, okay, and becoming consciously aware of that and growing in your understanding. So, obviously, self centered um, perception is always failing to see the bigger picture, uh, always failing to be considerate of others, uh, and for this reason is ignorant, less efficient, and productive. And yes, now when we talk about growth and something like the control or autonomy, we also can talk about the dependency and self sufficiency. So now, obviously, in some sense, both could be uh, reasonable, needed, and maybe desirable. And in some sense, both could be damaging or hurting. So let's consider it. S- So self sufficiency is the ability to provide for your own needs, ability to provide for yourself. Now, obviously, that would be something positive. Why would it be something negative? Um, well, also this is because of its the positive side, that is, it's due to the reason that self-sufficiency is the direct sign um of the growth, perhaps it as close as we can get, you know. Of course it could be a corrupted way of gathering self-sufficiency, but still in most cases the growth would allow for a greater degree of self-sufficiency. And therefore, oftentimes that's exactly how we consider maturity to be. Um, because as you grow, you expand yourself on different domains, and you grow in potential and capacity, uh, and competence. Okay, so as a result, you would be uh, probably able to do more, following the logic. Okay, so these are the positive side of self-sufficiency, unless self-sufficiency leads to isolation. And it could lead to isolation due to the different factors. Perhaps it could be pride, pride and arrogance. You can say pride, arrogance, and ignorance. 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 Okay. Because, well, self-sufficiency is only helpful in as much as you're actually self-sufficient. Because at the point where your self-image contradicts to reality, it fails to be efficient. for you, of course. And therefore, when your actual self sufficiency is failed and becomes damaging, is when you fake this self sufficiency, or you perceive yourself to be self sufficient where you're not in reality. And it could go from pride, for arrogance, ignorance, false self image. It also could spring from this strong desire to be self sufficient. And this could result in yourself being uh, overvaluing or over evaluating perhaps your actual capacities. All right. Um, and it also could be your desire to distance yourself from fear of being dependent. So of course you also would do it if you would want to work out your perfect image of self sufficient you. So and to kind of add up to your self image. And this is also the point where your actual self sufficiency contradicts the or misaligns with reality and becomes damaging to you. Because if you fear that you are that well you can be dependent, you distance yourself from others, so not to be dependent. But the question is, well, do you actually grow by doing so? Do you grow through the isolation? And well, there is a reasonable arguments to make that, well, it's actually isolation actually hinders and stagnates your growth. Okay, so it's also not helpful. Now, what about dependency? Is dependency purely negative, or can it be neutral or positive? Now, obviously, dependency is inefficient in that sense in which self sufficiency is efficient. So, you're needed when you're dependent, you're needed to be provided. You're in need. Let's write this. You're in need. You're in need to be provided. So you have all the same needs, but you can't satisfy them yourself. And of course, if someone will fail to satisfy your needs, um, it's not great for you. Okay? So it threatens your survival, thriving. We can just say it's a threat to you, okay? To be dependent on someone else, of course, is a threat because no one is as interested as you are in yourself. Um, no one else feels your needs stronger than you feel them. Of course, if we don't consider specific cases when you're devalue yourself, okay? Uh, so you are the closest one to yourself, to your because you are the conscious mind. Uh, okay. And now, well, obviously, here when dependency would damage you, and then it could also damage you by, of course, stagnating your growth and development. Um, Again, assuming the relationships of the growth and self sufficiency. So, yeah, um, it could lead to unhealthy attachments because when you're dependent, attach to uh, uh, inconsistent or neglecting agent is better than having no one else to provide for you. Um, so attach is better than not to attach at all and die. Okay. So, and it is when you're in actual need. So it can lead to some damaging attachments as well as inconsistent attachments, and it can be strongly um, damaging of your relationships because you also would put a lot of expectation and demand, potentially becoming burden. Obvious factors. Now, how dependency could be, or in which view the dependency could be even neutral or helpful, it could be in a view that we're all weak and limited, but you're just being honest about it. Honesty, okay? Because it is the same as the self sufficiency contradicting the reality. Okay, so here it works the same with dependency. Oh, when you trying to hide it and fake it, okay, it does not becomes helpful just because you want to elevate um your self image. Okay, so dependency can be positive in a view if you're being honest about your dependency or weakness or limitations or the need for personal relations. So um, honesty, let's say about uh, limitations, weaknesses. Okay. So, in a view of its being as ability, and again, vulnerability in a sense of sincerity and genuine sharing. Okay. All right. Now we talked about dependency and self-sufficiency, and a lot. What else should we touch on? We can touch on again on control, but let me talk more about autonomy because it's more related to that. And autonomy comes from you being a separate agent, independent agent. Is it good or bad to be independent agent? Well, why would you want it? Well, our independency connected to us being conscious. Okay. So we are conscious. We are conscious about the processes going within us. We are conscious of our instinctive inclinations, and for this we can fathom. We also are conscious about other agents, other players, our needs, other needs, and For these reasons, we can reflect and comprehend the we can comprehend the and understand the force, okay, uh, and control when someone controls us, because we're conscious and we're living. So we can understand when someone attempts to regulate us, okay, and conscious mind for this known to be a living mind, okay. But not going further into philosophy, we can just say that, well, as conscious beings, we are craving for freedom, for independency, not being controlled, because our will is the product of our consciousness. We're able to will, and whenever we're not able, we're suppressed. So, in a way, by willing, we're just being. And of course, we want to be as we are and not to be suppressed or undermined. So, so freedom is the matter of crucial importance on the level of survival, and definitely fundamental for our striving. So autonomy is important attribute of conscious being. It desires to be uh, autonomous. It desires to be. Uh, it desires to will. Okay. Uh, it desires to operate in itself for and uh, not to be forced. Okay. But in this regard, if we are free, that would mean that, and if we free in regard that nothing but our conscious self regulates us, or is able to regulate our even our instinctive self, then we also have to deal uh, with the consequences of our will, with the consequences of our choices. And for this reason, we hold each other accountable. We hold each other uh, accountable in order to, or as a result of this recognition of ourselves being conscious beings, okay? So it is the acknowledgement of our consciousness that is free willed. Free will. Okay. So it's hard to argue out that, well, we don't actually have the free will or the control in the sense of autonomy as independent agents, because, well, why do then we hold each other accountable? Because when we do, we suppose that our choices influence the reality. And so the very principle of our laws and accountability recognize our capacity to influence the reality. And the more you're conscious, logically, and the more you're reflecting, reasoning, the more you're autonomous. And well, for this reason, infantility presents another sort of limitation when it's narrowed down to uh, automatic reactions, right? Um, and when it's, in a sense, not fully yet free, okay? Um, while maturity, obviously, would be a progressive expansion of our consciousness, and thus the growth, and thus the uh, expansion of autonomy as well, in the sort of liberation that comes with the conscious living, the liberation from instinctive tendencies, and the liberation by being in control and having the sort of influence over the reality. Um, and of course, with the expand of your capacities, with the expand of you, you have a more way of influencing and impacting the reality. So this was on maturity and infantility. And thank you for watching this video.